Gabe Brown has often quoted Don Campbell by saying that if you want to change small things, change the way you do things. If you want to change big things, change the way you see things. Luke Jones from Understanding Ag joins me today to help us change the way we see things, change the way we think about what we value on our agricultural operations.
The more I think about it is, yeah, we're essentially laundering a lot of money through these producers, and I don't think they can see the writing on the wall. And these guys are year to year right now trying to figure out how to make it work. But these guys think it's taboo to have any kind of animal on that ground. You've got livestock. They're underneath your feet. Even for the livestock above ground, you have to focus on the livestock beneath your feet first, number one, before you earn the right to do anything above ground, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're going to be addicted to these amendments, these synthetics. But the thing that frustrates me is we've got people in the cover crop world that says you got to have this high technology, you got to have all these attachments on your planter to be able to plant this cover crop. My planter is from 1970. If you're a husband, take your wife with you. Let her see things that are being told and experienced. Let her tell you her opinion based off what she's seeing every day out there.
We'll also talk about the importance of the quality of the things that we produce through our agricultural operations.
And I remember, the late Dave Brandt, some of the stories he talked about, with the grain he was delivering to a local hog farm, his protein levels and things like that were through the roof, and how well the hogs grew and how much less of inputs were needed as far as subtherapeuticals to treat all the sick hogs was drastically reduced compared to the same hog barn using a different corn source. I'd much rather talk about quality than quantity. If we can start talking with those kind of words, the health crisis can start to diminish.
And the true legacy that we want to leave behind for those who will come after us.
It's not a shiny tractor. It's not that record yield trophy hanging on the wall. To me, it's the fact that you've got a biologically active soil that your kids can take over to pass on to the next generation. That is the thing that I want people to be able to pass on.
All that and more on this episode 411 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by Understanding Ag.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag studios. I'm very excited to be joined once again by Luke Jones. As you heard there in that cold open, Luke is a clip-generating machine, and he's got a lot of good things to say about what we value and how we think about our agricultural operations and the importance of taking all of the holistic context of our operations into account as we make decisions. So very excited to share this conversation with Luke, with you, right after a word from our sponsor today, the Soil Health Academy. We've been fortunate to feature some of the world's leading regenerative ag and adaptive grazing experts on our show. And many of those experts are farmer-rancher instructors for the nonprofit Soil Health Academy. This year, you'll have several opportunities to experience and profit from attending one of their remarkable on-farm schools and workshops. Whether you're interested in learning more about diversifying corn and bean rotations to increase profitability, merging multi-species and marketing, grazing on the high plains and in northern environments, regenerative farming and ranching, or enhancing profits and production in your beef or dairy operation, the Soil Health Academy has a school for you. One of the best investments you can make is in yourself, so visit www.soilhealthacademy.org to learn more and register. Financial assistance scholarships are available. Luke, thanks for joining me again on the Working Cows podcast. Welcome back.
Clay, always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you have corn, or probably a diverse mix in your background, but some large leaves there in your background, and you are in an I state, and I think that the I states to me, and you can add some context to this if you want to, but the I states to me are kind of the epitome of conventional agriculture at this time. Just kind of that corn, soybeans rotation, if you want to call it a rotation, and nothing there as a cover crop through outside of the growing season and some of those things. So how do we get out of that system? How do we wean ourselves off of that system?
Yeah, so Clay, it's a loaded question, right? And I always tell people just a little context about myself. I essentially consider myself a first generation farmer. Family, when I was younger, had farm ground back in the 80s. Fairly large operation, about 1,600 acres with a large cattle operation as well, a feedlot. Once my grandpa passed away, no offense to my dad or my uncles, but they like to work hard, but they like to party harder, so they lost it. So I've always felt like I was cheated out of being able to farm. So I had to figure out a way to get into it again myself. And here in Illinois, after going through college, getting into ag retail, that was the easy way to work on the farm. Essentially, you've got your foot in it every day with whoever you're working with. So um, very conventionally minded. That's the way I was growing up and raised, and that's the way I thought everything had to be. But in college, luckily, I had a professor, Dr. Joe Groover at Western Illinois University, who always made us think a little differently and question and quiz people about some of the practices they were doing. It always made me think, man, some of these crazy people they're doing some really neat things and they're making it go. So why can't we do it here? But as I said, I stayed in the conventional system. I went into work ag retail. After a while, I started to learn that this is a biological system. So, very conventionally minded. Didn't really know anything as regenerative or even sustainable at the time. But it's a loaded question because, the I states, they kind of hang their hat on being just a corn bean rotation. As you said, if it's even that, it's an alternation. Not to their own fault, I would say. I think a lot of it's just because they're incentivized to stay in that system. But here we are in a situation right now. The farm economy for some of these row crop guys is looking pretty grim. I feel for these people because they're torn right now. They feel safety with what they're doing already because they know they've got that bailout behind them. And a thing that always sticks in my head, once before I stepped out of ag retail, I had a guy that came in and he says, us farmers were just nothing more than a money conduit for the ag industry. And I just kind of sloughed it off at the time. And the more I think about it is, yeah, we're essentially laundering a lot of money through these producers. And I don't think they can see the writing on the wall. But the reason I say that is, when your back's against the wall, you can't see the writing on the wall. And these guys are year to year right now trying to figure out how to make it work. And, with regenerative ag coming into the picture, you're seeing a lot of money thrown at it. At least you were back with the Inflation Reduction Act. And obviously that's been kind of nixed right now. Good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I'm not here for any of that discussion, but there was a lot of money there for people to get involved and started. Thing about that doesn't work well in those situations is you've got a lot of these companies and organizations throwing money out without anybody to help educate these producers on how these practices or how these implementations are going to affect them. And really, with us understanding ag, our goal is to help make these farmers profitable again. Starting with what's underneath our feet. And so much of these row crop guys have been bought in. It's all in or nothing. I think they're going to ride this ship out, to nothing if they have to. And I just feel that we've got to figure out a way to get the message into their ear a little bit better. We've got to wean away from some of the conventional mindset, but also ease into the regenerative mindset as well, because it's stressful and it makes you wonder, what if, what if when I start to go down this path? And us at Understanding Ag, we try to make it as easy as possible for producers to go down that route.
What are some of the pieces of that mindset or the elements of that mindset that we're trying to wean away from?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the standard use of fertility. We see high amounts of fertility still being applied. I would say when the farm markets are high, farmers get really sloppy. But when the markets are really cheap, farmers get sloppier. We got to find that equilibrium or happy place somewhere. I really don't see people when the markets are high, they don't really want to try a whole new trend or practice, if you will, because they know they're going to strike the iron while it's hot. But when it's tight, they pull back the reins and just really go back to the bare minimum. But usually when they're in that happy medium, markets are okay. They'll try some new practices. But it's just, it's hard for these guys to pull away right now. But just getting them to step in and start on one small field, one small acre is a good starting point right now.
And I think that, these challenging times can be a a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing can be that, well, if corn is only going to be worth X dollars and that's really not even profitable for me, then maybe I'm willing to experiment with some integration of livestock or a cover crop or something like that. And I know, friends of mine, people that I would count as friends in eastern South Dakota, who've told me just that. It's like, well, my dad won't won't let me graze cows on the corn stalks when corn is profitable. But when it's not, then he's a little more willing to sit down and listen. And so I think that, it presents that opportunity, and maybe that we can start to see some of these changes being made.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you said there, Clay, about grazing cattle or not. A lot of these people here in the I states, more so than anything here in Illinois. If you get over what they call the Golden Triangle, which is Decatur to Champaign and a little north towards Bloomington, there they say it's some of the best ground in the world. And my gosh, if you see even a fence post still left around over there, you're seeing something. But these guys think it's taboo to have any kind of animal on that ground. But they need to take a step back and understand how that land was formed through ruminants, through animals,
Yeah.
through tall vegetation, through the diverse living plants. So if only they could take a step back, it wasn't very far removed, how quickly we've forgotten that. But for them to think that those are two completely separate enterprises just blows my mind. And, we're trying to make a push on helping people understand that. But even then, Clay, it still comes down to, you've got livestock, they're underneath your feet. And I tell people, even for the livestock above ground, you have to focus on the livestock beneath your feet first, number one, before you earn the right to do anything above ground, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're going to be addicted to these amendments, these synthetics, anything that's going to be necessary to keep that crop alive and propped up for it to make it to harvest. So yeah, it's just, I feel like you could spit in the jug and tell a farmer this is something he's going to need to apply this year and it's going to save him and it's biological, and sure it is, but most farmers right now are just at the mercy of whatever their trusted, I use air quotes here, trusted advisor tells them that they need to apply just to get them through the end of the year. And it's frustrating for me, since I was in ag retail, seeing our company, the manufacturers, the manufacturers of the product, the developers of the product, every one of those steps were making money, but the farmer was just trading dollar for dollar. And we're starting to see that even more so in the regenerative space, where we've got a lot of companies coming out with products. We try to tell people to be cautious on this. We can't trade dollar for dollar. We're using some lesser, less harsh chemicals, if you will, or products to stimulate biology. But we also have to understand that if we're trading dollar for dollar, is it getting us in the right direction?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, what are you trying to do? Are you trying
Exactly.
to maintain yields at the same well, this will be a preview of a upcoming episode with Brian Doherty, your colleague at
Mhm.
Understanding Ag. And he said, there's basically three approaches to agriculture, and it's a mild tweak. I can't remember what the first one maybe, like, I'll just say status quo. A mild tweak is the second option, or redesign. That's the third option, and so a lot of these quote unquote regenerative products sometimes just end up being a mild tweak. Okay, we're not spending money on NP and K, but now we're spending money on this. And
Sure.
yeah, it might be better for everything under the ground, but did it move us towards profitability, or did we just change what we were spending money on? Is that kind of what you're saying, trading dollar for
Yeah.
dollar?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, I'm on social media and I follow stuff. I rarely post anything on there anymore, just because everybody gets so offended on everything you say. So I just more than anything scan and evaluate what's going on out there and on the web, if you will. And I seen somebody make a comment about how 634 doesn't work, or it takes too long. They said company X, I could see results year one with company X in the regenerative space visually. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, we could even go work the ground and see a visual response, right, to that crop, because we're going to increase the CO2 respiration or increase that microbial activity. We can see a response from going out there and applying sulfur and zinc on some of the corn crop this year and see a visual response. I remember one of our main agronomists said, if you want to make corn green, I've got the prescription to do it. And you can make it look green, but as I drive around and I look at the corn and how everybody's doing everything just as they should or how they're recommended to do it, corn crop looks great, looks so-called healthy. It's that dark green look, if you will. But by tassel time, they're out there spraying a fungicide on it because the corn's loaded with disease. So we really have to challenge ourselves and ask, do we even really know what a healthy crop looks like? Just because it looks healthy doesn't mean it is healthy, because I think we can see time and time again, you can make something healthy, just like the whole scenario with a sick fish in a bowl, right? You can medicate and keep that fish alive, right? Or keep the water, or do we just need to completely remove the fish from that system and put it into fresh water? There's that whole analogy there. There's ways we can give a false expectation or reality of what's actually going on out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's goes back to this idea of reductionistic thinking, right? I
Sure.
mean, yes, can we elicit a response maybe year one through, I don't know, depends on the brittleness of your environment. And the answer is going to be yes, you definitely can. But is that generationally sustainable? Can we do
Yeah.
it for 100 years the same way and expect the same response? Or is years 5 through 100 going to require an ever increasing amount of synthetic fertility, which, to your point, throughout this podcast, continues to add to the bottom line of the agricultural company and not the agricultural list?
That's right. We use a lot of non-renewables resources in this and how can we understand that, we can ride this wave for a while, but at some point somebody's going to feel the brunt of that. And that's not fair, right? That for us to say we're feeding the world, we're going to take all our resources to feed the world. And I get so fed up hearing that, Clay. I was brainwashed in that, thinking that's right, we're feeding the world. But yeah, you can feed the world, but we can't even nourish our own communities. And that's the frustrating thing. We are, I think the last stat I've seen is we're losing an acre of soil every second, right? In our agricultural resources. We know that
The
we've lost
soil is
50%.
blowing away.
Yeah, it's just, it's all eroding. Yep.
Yeah.
Whether through rain runoff or wind displacement, we're losing it. An acre per second. That's the average stat right now. That's not sustainable for sure. And I don't even like using the word sustainable. It's just as dirty of a word as anything. But we know these things are going on, and I get so frustrated. Even like I said, I'm not going to get into politics, but when we hear all these government leaders and things like that, praising the farmer and how they're doing everything right, and there's nothing they're doing, nothing wrong. Listen, I'm in it too. I'm here. I want this to be a long-term deal for my family, for the future generations, far beyond I could even fathom. We can't look at what's going on right now and think everything's right. Right? They just looking for votes. I want results. I don't care about votes. I want to see these producers. I want to see this land get healed up, get back to what it once was, or what it once could be, or what it could be. And I know that's a pie in the sky theory, but because we'll never, in my lifetime or many generations from now, see what it once was, in my opinion. But we've got to start doing better. So that's all there is to it.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Understanding Ag. We've been fortunate to feature a number of Understanding Ag's regenerative farming and ranching experts on the podcast over the years. In that time, Understanding Ag's reputation for helping producers understand and successfully and profitably apply money-saving regenerative principles and practices has only grown. And there are two primary reasons for that. First, Understanding Ag's consultants are farmers and ranchers who have been there, done that, on their own regenerative farms. And second, Understanding Ag's consultants aren't in the business to sell you costly inputs. They get no commissions and you get no pressure, just profit-building solutions for your operation. Learn more at understandingag.com and discover the hope in healthy soils. That's www.understandingag.com. And we could talk about the issues all day and talk about the problems facing the current agricultural model, but we should turn, I think, our focus towards what we do. What are we going to do to help people wean off of this conventional model?
Yeah. So, I said there earlier, we've lost 50 to 70% of our soil carbon, right? Everybody talks about, well, I'm not going to increase yield in this regenerative system, or I can't reach high yield. The old saying, are we trying to out yield our environment? Right. But we know we've seen some other studies that said if we can increase that the soil carbon by 0.4% on an annual basis, we can increase our corn production by 14% and our wheat production by 20%. Just it's carbon. We're lacking carbon. And our current model, corn, soybeans, synthetic fertilizers, standard use of chemicals, we're depleting that carbon. And that's the driving force of profitability, getting carbon back in the system. So not only can we maintain or even possibly increase yield, but we're also going to have a more nutrient dense product in the long run. And I tell people, I hope this gets into the ears of some grain merchandisers and grain retailers, that because they're always looking for ways to dock producers on the grain that's being brought into the elevator. I lay it out for producers when we have meetings to say, they say there's no premiums in regenerative ag. So what if there is no premiums? But what if now the standard is changed? What if you have to have X protein level or X nutrient dense level in your grain, or else you're going to start getting docked for it? Now you're going to have the basis plus your dock, or subtracting your dock off that as well. But what if now, if you can reach protein level X or nutrient density levels this and this, you get the full price? That's essentially a premium, in my opinion. So versus being docked. So I think we have to start thinking in terms like that. And I remember, the late Dave Brandt, some of the stories he talked about, with the grain he was delivering to a local hog farm, his protein levels and things like that were through the roof, and how well the hogs grew and how much less of inputs were needed as far as subtherapeuticals to treat all the sick hogs was drastically reduced compared to the same hog barn down the road with the same owner using a different corn source.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I don't think, we're not, as you said, not trying to talk politics necessarily, but I don't think that the scenario that you are laying out here is that far-fetched in the next, 5 years. With the appointment of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and his kind of crusade to look into a lot of these things. He's got the right people from our perspective in his ear in a lot of ways. And I don't have an exhaustive list, so you can point out the ones that we wouldn't appreciate maybe, but and he is in the process even now, it sounds like, of working with the USDA and looking at the SNAP program and reworking that. And that is that's the way majority of the Farm Bill is the SNAP program. And so, we're talking big changes coming and potentially impacting farmers directly.
Oh, I agree 100%. And Clay, I still have hope for the agricultural community. I know it sounds like doom and gloom all the time we talk about stuff, or a lot of the things I bring up, but I still believe there's hope. What I've seen is a huge resurgence of producers or younger farmers like ourselves getting into it, just hoping dad gives them the reins to do just a little bit. I've never seen so many younger producers having so much more fun than they've ever had. They're excited. I think they can see the writing on the wall. And, locally, even we've got a pretty poor community where I'm at, but just the amount of people that have reached out like, hey, will you raise us some meat birds? Can we buy some of your Jimmy Red corn? Things like that. It's out there. So the awareness is there. If I'd much rather talk about quality than quantity. And I think if we can start talking with those kind of words, the health crisis can start to diminish, because we carry a big load on our shoulders as far as we can feed the world. We can nourish the communities, but we have to look at it. I'd much rather look at it from a nourishing standpoint than a global standpoint. we got to take care of our own backyard first, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's there. I really think it's there, but we just have to give these people the accessibility to these products that they're looking for. I've heard people say, we're in a food desert here in the Midwest, and I 100% agree with that. I drive around, all across Illinois here, some of the best ground in the world. It's so good that evidently they don't have to have anything else growing or produced on it for the other 7 months of the year, So, but yet they're the same ones squealing about not making a profit. I've had some guys reach out to me, 240 bushel corn, and they're not making ends meet. To me, it just blows my mind that, we're stuck on that hamster wheel, just looking differently. And the diversity key, we talk about diversity in your operation. Clay, if I can just tell people one thing, it's just do a little research, your own market research. That will pay you tremendously. I'll guarantee you there's a market out there for something, and it doesn't have to be large scale. It can be a 30 or 40, it can be 1 acre of something. It's there, but you just have to be willing to take the initiative and go for it. Trust yourself, bet on number one. And I think so many producers they're so hesitant or gun shy to even look outside the status quo because for one, they think they're going to get made fun of, which have at it. I don't care if they want to dress me in a clown suit. I'll wear it. I really don't care. I love it because if anything, it's getting people to think about some of the things we're going around here. Clay, I used to be 2 crops only, corn or soybeans. This coming year, I've got 7 crops in my rotation. Don't think I'm not going to publish this stuff because the thing about it is 5 of those 2 are probably going to be way more profitable than the 2 heavy hitters by a long ways.
Yeah.
By a long ways.
Well, Dave Ramsey quote, right? If your broke friends are making fun of you, you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, I've got multiple ways I'm getting made fun of too. So other than just being broke, but no, it's, I think what it comes down to, Clay, for us to wean, it's not so much even just weaning off the products we're using, but just weaning off the mindset of I have to do the same thing as everybody else. And if I could have every dollar back that I invested into equipment to be a row crop farmer or farm like I thought I needed to farm, I'd have every dollar of that put into fence, and man, I'd be grazing every acre because for me and in my area, in my context, I'm farming out of context. I'm farming timber soil, with a creek bottom below me. You want to talk about the perfect deer plot? I mean, and maybe I'm under advertising our hunting leases here, but it hit me this fall. Everything looked great, and then when you're wiped out by deer, it makes you think, it humbles you and think, I am farming out of context in my neck of the woods where I'm at. That's not for everybody. I'm not saying everybody needs to change that, but I need to have more animal integration on this land. It'd be more profitable for me. But it's just getting away from that and accepting that corn and soybeans isn't the only answer. It's not the only market. There's tons of marketing opportunities out there, and there's a lot of companies looking for somebody to supply them. But nobody wants to sit there and invest in their own time to find those markets or help develop those markets. That's the most critical thing. Anybody can go plant corn, plant soybeans. Anybody can run a combine. It's the marketing to me that will set yourself apart.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think it's the same on the livestock side. We can grow black cattle. But if you're just going to haul them to the sale barn like everybody else on the same week of the year as everybody else, you're probably going to have supply outpacing demand and get paid less than they're worth for them. And so if you're willing to take some time and come up with a out of the box marketing strategy, you can probably demand a premium for those same cattle. And I think the same is those are all commodities, right? And if you're going to market them like a commodity, you'll get paid like a commodity.
That's right. That's an excellent point. Yep. I think the key is what that is, Clay, especially in the regenerative space here. If we can help people understand that you have to be profitable in a conventional market, that sets themselves apart from everybody else right there. If you can stay profitable in a conventional market, if you can even start to get a little bit of a premium, that's extra money in your pocket, right? So we try to help people get competitive and more profitable in a standard market as everybody else is, because if you can compete with everybody else in that market, you're doing okay. You'll be okay.
Yeah. What do you mean by that, or what does that look like?
So really it's just helping drop your expenses, so especially in the row crop world, if we can use tools, different soil testing, for years and years and years, we relied on the Braze, Olson, and Malik extractants, so as a company, we do a suite of tests, and I'm sure you've heard it on here before, the TND, the Haney, and the PLFA, the phospholipid fatty acid test that we like to have on all of our acres, as much as possible anyway. And looking at a different test. And that's, we've heard people say, and I'm not saying the Haney test is the only test, and I'm not saying it's a bad test or it's the best test, I'm also not saying that the old way of testing is the best or the worst. We've got to find that balance. But we also know, people said the Haney test isn't calibrated. Calibrated against what? The Olson, Malix, and Braze, the accuracy of some of those, Clay, as I look back through some of those, like calcium, we talk about how important calcium is in our system, 45% accuracy, right? Zinc, an important, it's not a macro by any means, but 45%. Phosphorus, 85%. Potassium, 80%. Are we wanting to bank and bet a lot of our fertility management on less than Phosphorus and potassium are the highest ones, but all the others that are very important, they're less than 50% accuracy. So flip a coin, right? But if we can look at some alternative tests and challenge it in the same field, split those, if we can help these producers raise just as profitable a crop on less inputs, they've got the advantage over their neighbor who's doing everything else standard and status quo. So if we can help reduce the overheads, drop those expenses in there, we're going to help drive that net profit up.
And is the mechanism there getting that underground livestock to go to work for you? Is that how you do that? Because you're testing the soil and well, we've got plenty of all of these nutrients available in the soil, but we need to treat these underground livestock in a way that they'll go to work for us. Is that the mechanism there, or what's the mechanism?
It's part of it. We have to look at this. The old testing looks at it more of a chemical system, whereas the Haney helps us mimic. It uses three exudates or three extractants that mimic plant root exudates. It's malic, oxalic, and citric acid, right? So, and what they wash those nutrients off with water after using those extractants. So, what we found out is it is biology. So if we can get more living roots, get the biology fed with that carbon that I said we're depleted of so much in our systems, that's what it comes down to: getting the biology cranking to cycle and start letting that mineral cycle come to work. There's a lot of free tools we have in farming and agriculture in general that we just don't take advantage of. The water cycle, how well are we getting that water in the soil? The mineral cycle, how well are we getting biology to cycle and do their job? Community dynamics, do we have diversity on that operation? The other thing is getting the sunlight, the energy cycle. Are we capturing the free things that we have available to us to help drive that net bottom line? And the answer for the majority of the acres out there is no. It's, Mr. Salesman, please send me 100 acres of this prescription and help me get a crop out this year.
Yeah. Is there something else then that you would say by testing we can know this and it will reduce our dependence on these external synthetic inputs?
Yeah, if we can start getting mycorrhizal fungi populations established, if we can start seeing some protozoa in our soil tests with the PLFA, those are some things that we're looking at. I mean, we can see a high CO2 respiration on some of these tests. Or we see people will say they'll have a high organic matter. That's great. You can have a big house, but if you don't have anybody in there, oh what? So what? You just got a big house. But if we can start seeing the CO2 respirations tick up, if we can start seeing some of the biology that we're looking for, the protozoa and mycorrhizal fungi, then we know we have some things that are starting to crank our way. But until we see that, it's still a weaning phase of the conventional products.
Sure. Is there is some of this year one though? Say, guy, Joe down the road calls you, says, "Hey, I'm ready. I can see the writing on the wall. We need to make some changes here." Year one, are some of these things going to be options or realities that, based on the soil test, you can make these decisions and see those things start to happen?
I believe so. Yes, Clay. I mean, every instance is different. Every farm is different. Even though a lot of them have done the same thing as everybody else for years, they're all drastically different in how they're going to react to this. I can think of quite a few clients that I've been working with this year, and it's tight. These guys are working off farm income as well to help make the farm flow. And I'm still seeing it's just the overheads. Even though I can cut fertility and stuff like that out and some insecticides. Change their trait platforms up on the stuff that they're planting. It's just the extra overheads in there that people have just, brought into the system that are eating them up. We can do some drastic fertility reductions. If they've got some rye out there, and it really just depends on the context of the field that they're planting into. I have no problem with guys even planting untreated beans into green rye, and starting to pull off some of the seed treatments. But that's the thing. I mean, for me, just to make a blanket statement and say every farmer needs to do this, this, and this, I would cause them catastrophe, and I don't want that to happen to anybody. I'm much more confident if they are curious to reach out to us. We'll look at the scenarios that you're dealing with, and we'll start helping you understand where we can successfully cut and trim. There's a lot of fat on this hog, and I think we just got to start trimming right away.
Yeah, and some of it maybe even up to and including selling equipment that you could probably more cheaply, more affordably, more profitably call in somebody to do it for you on a contract basis. Is that sometimes part of the equation?
Yeah, there's a lot of iron out there that people don't need. But the thing that frustrates me is we've got people in the cover crop world that says you got to have this high technology, you got to have all these attachments on your planter to be able to plant this cover crop. Clay, my planter is from 1970. We're getting it done. So it doesn't take anything. And to me, that's what it deters people when you freak them out or you inflate it that it has to be all this high tech or this is the new direction and it's all this good stuff. My gosh, if open station tractor and 1970s planter Clay, I mean, I can make it work, but we've been thinking that you got to have the shiny and green and yellow or bright red, and it's far beyond that. I mean, gosh, I think we just got to get back to being a little more modest in what this system is. It's really not that complicated. I think um, farming's farming's hard, but it's also simple. The way I look at it, I think we try to make it too much of a big job, and I think we look for validation in everything we do, and let's just be humble in what we do. And don't expect everybody to say, "Oh, you're busting your tail to do this and feed the world." I'm blessed to have the opportunity to work with the land, and I'm fortunate enough to start seeing some positive responses to what we're doing here by pulling away from some of the standard practices that we once did. And I tell you what, it's so rewarding, and the fact that I can get some people on our operation to see what's going on, that's the aha moment for these people. And even though it's small scale compared to the standard producer next to me, it's all scalable. That's the fun thing about it is it's just a matter of finding your comfort level that you're willing to step away from the status quo, even if it's on the back 40 or if you want to be bold and do it on the front of the highway. Just find that opportunity to get it implemented and give us the opportunity to use a different style of testing so that you can start to see the results and weigh out the economics of it. Because Clay, I tell people all the time, if they're scared about jumping into regenerative ag, how many years have you been doing the same thing over and over the way that you were always told that it was supposed to be done? And has it always worked out every year? And the simple answer is no. So why would you be scared to try something different if it's going to be better for your bottom line?
Yeah.
I challenge everybody with that.
Certainly. So say we've gotten over this hurdle, we're willing to try the different testing and see what do we actually need and think about where we can cut some of these costs and maintain profitability, even maybe with not having the exact same yield that we had before in the conventional system. Next step is maybe experimenting with a cover crop. Is that where you'd go from there? Or even if we're going to say, hey, we're going to do it on 5 acres over here in the corner where nobody's going to see it or something like that. But during the same season that we would be typically growing corn on these acres, we're going to experiment with this multi-species diverse mix. Is that where you'd go, or is there something else you'd think about first?
Yeah, it really just depends on their comfort level, and how much experience they've had even trying to cover crop. Because we've seen a lot of programs out here that's gotten people experimenting with cover crops, but like I said, the understanding or the knowledge of how to manage these cover crops in different scenarios, they haven't went through backup plan A through Z, 1, 2, 3. They don't know how to salvage any profit from that. So really, it just depends. If they're in a corn bean rotation, the simplest answer, and I know it's been said before on here, I think even one of the podcasts I did with you, is just start with rye after corn. And even then, I challenge people, get some kind of small grain in the rotation. That for disease, breaking the weed cycles, so-called weeds, disease cycles, pest cycles. My gosh, I mean, we're already seeing, we see fungicides and insecticides and herbicides and things like that start to fail, or there's a new one coming on here. And, there's always something that's coming at us. Mother Nature's a battle or a fight that I don't want to get involved with. I'll step aside. I'd much rather let her talk to me, tell me what we need to be doing and make adjustments according to that. But just getting the living root in the system more than just the 3.5, 4.5 months of the year in our neck of the woods that we've got a plant actually exuding compounds in the system to feed biology. But breaking up that cropping cycle, I think that if we can get away from the year-to-year mindset and look at a 3 to 5 year rotation, things start to change. And for me, honestly, that's when I started throwing wheat into the rotation. I can't say this enough because I'm seeing so much talk about, all these companies that are developing corn that's going to be able to fix its own nitrogen. You need to apply this product to make more nitrogen on your farm. And I show them pictures all the time. Anytime I get a chance to get in front of somebody, I show them just by throwing wheat in my rotation, just by cutting anhydrous ammonia out of my rotation, within 2.5, 3 years, I was getting my corn to start fixing its own nitrogen. I've got mucilage over my brace roots. And I show that to people and they say, well, what product did you apply on there to get that? I said, nothing. It was diverse living roots after my wheat harvest that I just let go. I didn't have livestock integrated on that clay. It was just a diverse living cover crop. But just how fast Mother Nature can respond and start to work in synchrony with your management by pulling away some of those harsher products works very fast. But it just takes that mindset of getting over that. So, and I tell people too, if you think corn that can fix its own nitrogen is going to be cost effective, I've never seen a new hybrid or anything come out that's cheaper than the previous one. So be prepared to pay.
And I think that's a part of it. We are people who are enjoying a lifestyle up against people who are running a business. The agricultural companies are running a business, and we will continue to purchase their products because we enjoy the lifestyle. And they're saying us that they're telling us that it will help us to continue to be able to stay on the land. Well, if you're subsidizing a poor business model because you enjoy a lifestyle, then you're not going to be the one who wins in that equation. You're going to end up going, hurting your business to stay in the lifestyle, all the while you're propping up and helping the success of the business who's selling you the things that they tell you need to have so you can stay on the land.
It's a death cycle. I mean, for people to think that that's a long-term solution to stay in the model that we're in, why we have fewer and fewer farmers year after year? Why is the stress levels increased year after year? Like I said, I've never seen the way the system's going right now of mass production. Why do we want to keep mass producing? To me, that just makes you want to say, if everybody can mass produce, it's going to drive things down. It's going to make things harder. And I think secretly, and I'll tell you a dirty little secret about farmers, we all want somebody to have some kind of natural disaster in their area to help keep the prices in check, or so keep them in check. They want somebody to have a drought. They want somebody to have a flood. But yet they always act like they're cheering for everybody to have record yields. Well, you want record yields, be prepared for record economic collapse.
Yep, for sure. And I, I wonder how much of the struggle that we have in our agricultural system is related to the fact that we just really want to know what that yield was. Like, I planted a cover crop that we intended to graze when we planted it, and it was tough, not to say, oh, let's just go out there and bale that up and just see how many tons are actually out there, Yeah. And so I think that sometimes where you're to do that, to know what the yield is, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice ground cover, and so that can be a tough nut to crack, I think, sometimes.
Well, I'm going to help you here, Clay, because you could easily just go out there and pull a forage biomass sample and send that off in a 2x2 or a 3x3 sample, and then you'll know how many tons you're able to produce. And that is another piece of the puzzle. We do cover crop biomass analysis to see what that cover crop is holding on to that could potentially be released for us as well. So another piece of the puzzle that we can look into when people start implementing cover crops into the rotation. So don't short yourself. There is a way we could have found that out for you.
All right. Well,
without taking it all.
Yeah, it's gone through a cow now, so it's too late. But
even better yet. Yeah.
You just calculate grazing days, right? How many grazing days? How many bales of feed did I save myself?
That's right.
But yeah, what else is in your mind when we're talking about weaning off the conventional system? What are some of the other things that you were thinking of there?
Clay, I guess it just really comes down to we have to look at the low-hanging fruits for these folks. We are in a tough time, as I said earlier. We've got to start somewhere. Even if they do feel safety in the standard system, my gosh, I mean, we got to start somewhere. I don't think that we know that what we've been doing has not been giving us the best results from an ecological standpoint. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. Profitability is not where I think what needs to be. I think nobody can deny that. I mean, farming on massive scale, some of these guys are penciling in, if they can make $10 to $50 an acre, that's great, but that's just one flat tire across the whole operation, and that's gone with some as big as this equipment is anymore. But I think we just have to open our mind up, accept what we're seeing out there, and think that we've got to start trying something different here. Now is just as good a time as any. I don't care what the markets show. We have to start taking the step in the right direction. And to me, and I'll toot our horn. There's no other company like Understanding Ag that can help people successfully in this route. Get to Soil Health Academy, invest in yourself, do your research. That's what I think people need to start, and just open your mind up. Take your wife with you. If you're a husband, take your wife with you.
Yeah.
Let her see things that are being told and experienced. Let her tell you her opinion based off what she's seeing every day out there. If I talk about, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of getting into regenerative ag, I say, the first step one is just find one farm. The second step is it takes two. It takes two people, you and your wife or you, your significant other, to be bought in on this and give it a chance, not just a 1 year chance. As I said, there was a lot of money out there to get people invested into cover crops, a lot of financial help. I've seen incredible amounts of funding out there. The bad thing is just I see lack of adoption from that, and that's because they just haven't been able to understand or be educated on what that can do. So work with somebody that's helping you understand the full system and the power it brings to the table. Whether you terminate a cover crop earlier or you let it go to maturity, work with somebody that will help you understand the full picture there, because it's such a dynamic system that for us to think that we can just insert product A or management B into the system and it's going to give us result this, we'd be fooling ourselves, And I don't want to mislead people and say regenerative ag is the best thing since sliced bread. There are potential watchouts. There are some things that we have to be cognizant of, but being open enough, or finding somebody that you can work with that is open enough to say, hey, here's some things that we could encounter, that's going to help set you up for more success, versus somebody that is telling you it's the best thing ever, because that can easily be misleading. I will say that.
Yep. Well, I think that's a great point about taking your wife with you. God certainly did wire us differently, and they see and hear things we don't, and that's a great insight as well. So appreciate that. Luke, anything else that you had on your mind here?
No, I just, like I said, I tell people, weaning off, it is simply that. It's not, don't cut the cord. Gosh, I hope nobody's in that position where they have to just completely bail out. That's no fun, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I want to see people continue to be on the land. I want to see more farmers on the land. I want to see them do a better job from a stewardship standpoint. I think we have the tools. There's enough knowledge out there. There's enough experience out there. There's no reason why we can't explode this thing to what it needs to be and what we deserve it to be for future generations. I was an FFA growing up, and I believe in the future of agriculture, with a faith born not of words, but of deeds. So what are those deeds? What are we going to implement on this land to give to our future generation? I think we have to take a step back. It's not a shiny tractor. It's not that record yield trophy hanging on the wall. To me, it's the fact that you've got a biologically active soil that your kids can take over to pass on to the next generation. That is the thing that I want people to be able to pass on, instead of the legacies and the trends and the stereotypes. That's where we have to be rooted in agriculture. So for me, take that step, reach out to us. We're here to help. We're hungry to help people, and our next generation deserves it, in my opinion.
Yep. And we're, Understanding Ag is there to help people discover the hope in healthy soils. And there is hope in those healthy soils. But, there's also options, no matter how much your back is up against the wall. What you were saying there brought to my mind Gabe's book, Dirt to Soil. And in the opening chapters of that book, he talks about the fact that one of the things that led him to experiment with bale grazing is he was too broke to afford twine to put in the baler, And so, I mean, if you think you're in a tough spot financially, I don't know if that you're in the too broke to put twine in the baler spot. And Gabe Brown made it through, and I think he's done all right.
Yeah, and he's helped spread the message as well. But yeah, it's as I said, Clay, I think we've got to wean away, but we also have to tiptoe in to the regen practices. And I don't want people to. We've seen it a lot where people go to Soil Health Academy and they want to go home guns a-blazing. Yeah. I tell them at the end of a Soil Health Academy, take a breath, start small. Because if you're going to fail small. But I don't like to say fail. I like to say learn. Learn's the new word that I've switched failure with. And if you can switch your mindset to that, farming's more fun when you have a different mindset. When it's not win or lose, it's learn and move on. It makes it more enjoyable.
Yep. Very good. Yep. Luke, thanks for your time today.
Always a pleasure, Clay. Thank you, sir.
Very good stuff there with Luke. Always appreciate his perspective and the way he articulates it. Coming up next week on the Working Cows podcast, looking forward to being joined by Ellen Bench. Once again, we're going to talk to her about managing the health of your livestock from a homeopathic perspective during calving season. So what are some of the things that you can do just prior to and during calving season to help your livestock thrive from a homeopathic health perspective? So look forward to sharing that with you real soon, coming your way on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.